I never thought my life would end that morning. One moment I reached for a glass of water, just like I had done 1,000 times before, but then everything went dark. No warning, no time to react. It was as if the world had been ripped away from me in an instant. I wasn't in pain, I wasn't scared, I was nowhere. Then something happened. At first there was only silence, so deep, so absolute it swallowed me whole. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even think. But then I felt it, something pulling me, something vast and unstoppable, dragging me away from everything I had ever known. I tried to fight it, but I had no body, no strength, no will of my own. And that's when I saw it. A place so terrifying, so real, that it shook me to my core. I thought I was dead. I thought this was the end. But I was wrong. It was just the beginning. What I saw next changed everything. It wasn't just a glimpse of the afterlife. It was a vision of the future. Our future. A future darker than any nightmare. A future where freedom no longer exists, where faith is outlawed, and where people willingly give up their souls without even realizing it. And the worst part? It's already happening. What if I told you that everything you thought you knew about the world, about life, about choice, was a lie? That the things we dismissed as conspiracy theories were never theories at all. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you is something they don't want you to hear, but you need to, before it's too late. They say that when you die, your life flashes before your eyes, but that's not what happened to me. There were no memories, no warm lights, no familiar faces waiting to greet me. Instead, there was nothing. At first, I didn't even realize I was dead. It's hard to explain, but it was like I had been ripped out of reality itself. No body, no voice, no time, just an endless, crushing silence. I should have been afraid, but there was no fear, because there was no me, just an overwhelming sense of being somewhere else. But then, in the middle of that void, something shifted. It wasn't a voice, not in the way we understand voices, but a presence, a force. It pulled me. No, it claimed me. And suddenly I was falling. Not down, not up, just away. Away from everything I had ever known. Then, out of nowhere, a sound. A low hum, deep and unsettling, vibrating through whatever I had become. It started soft, barely noticeable, but it grew. Louder, sharper, more alive. And then, boom! I felt it before I saw it. A burning light exploded into existence around me, but it wasn't warm. It wasn't comforting. It was raw, electrifying, and ancient. My entire being, if I even had one, was consumed by it. And suddenly, I knew I was no longer in control. Something, someone was watching me, studying me, judging me. That's when the fear hit. Because for the first time since I had died, I realized I wasn't alone. I don't know how long I floated in that nothingness. Time didn't exist, not the way it does in the living world. There was no before, no after, just an endless now. But what terrified me the most wasn't the emptiness. It was the presence, something vast, ancient, and completely beyond human comprehension. It wasn't just watching me. It was surrounding me, pressing in from all sides, like an ocean with no surface. I tried to move, to reach out, but I had no hands, no body. I was a thought, a whisper in the dark, a fragment of something that had already been lost. Then out of the blackness, shadows began to move. Not just any shadows. These were alive, twisting, writhing, stretching like they were made of something more than darkness. I couldn't see them with eyes, but I felt them. They slithered around me, through me, pulling at whatever was left of me. And then I heard it. A voice, not in my ears, but inside me, deep, distorted, echoing through every part of my being. You do not belong here. The words weren't spoken, they were felt, imprinted into whatever was left of my soul. And with them came a crushing weight, a pressure so intense it felt like my very existence was being unraveled. I wanted to scream, to fight, to run, but there was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Then, just when I thought I would dissolve into nothing, a flicker of light appeared in the distance. Small, barely noticeable, but unmistakably there. I had a choice. Stay in the abyss or try to reach the light. The darkness was endless. It pulled at me, whispering in a language I couldn't understand, yet somehow I felt its meaning. It was telling me to let go, to surrender, to become part of it. But then, there was the light. At first it was just a faint glow in the distance, almost easy to ignore. But the moment I focused on it, something changed. The abyss around me seemed to react, like it knew I was looking for a way out. The shadows twisted, their whispers turned to screeches, clawing at me with something beyond fear. I didn't think, I willed myself toward the light. And then, everything changed. The darkness shattered like glass, and suddenly I was moving. Faster than I had ever moved before, like I was being pulled by something far greater than myself. The light wasn't just ahead of me anymore, it was all around me, consuming everything in a blinding radiance. And then I felt it. Love. Not the kind of love we experience on earth, not fleeting, not conditional. This was overwhelming, infinite, pure. It didn't just surround me, it filled me, pouring into every part of my being. Every fear, every pain, every regret I had ever carried was stripped away in an instant. And then I saw him. I can't explain how I knew, but I knew. It was Jesus. He didn't speak with words, but I heard him. His presence was so powerful, so real, that there was no doubt. His eyes, they weren't just looking at me, they were seeing me. Every thought, every mistake, every hidden part of my soul. And yet, there was no judgment. Only love. I wanted to fall to my knees, but I had no body. I wanted to weep, but I had no tears. All I could do was exist in that moment, completely exposed, yet completely safe. And then he reached out, not with a hand, but with something deeper. And in that instant, he showed me everything. Every moment of my life flashed before me, not as memories, but as truth. I saw not only what I had done, but how it had affected others. Every word I had spoken, every action, even the smallest choices. I saw the ripples they had created, both good and bad. And yet, even with all my flaws laid bare, his love never wavered. Then I heard his voice, not as sound, but as knowing. It is not your time. I didn't want to leave, not after experiencing this, but before I could protest, before I could even think, everything shifted, and I was falling, back to the world I had left behind. As I stood there, if you could even call it standing in this realm, everything around me seemed to pulse with divine energy. Jesus was still there, his presence more real than anything I had ever known, and I felt as though I could stay in this moment. But then, the light around us shifted. It wasn't just light anymore, it was a vision. I wasn't merely watching, I was experiencing it. The first thing I saw was Earth, but not as I had left it. It was different, vibrating with energy, yet troubled. I could see cities filled with people, millions of lives moving all at once, but something was wrong. There was pain, there was division. People were more connected than ever before through technology, yet they felt more alone than at any point in human history. I saw families broken, trust shattered, people searching desperately for meaning in a world that told them nothing mattered. Then I saw disasters, earthquakes, storms, fires, some natural, some caused by human hands. But worse than the destruction was the fear. It spread like a disease, gripping people's hearts, blinding them to hope. And yet, amid the darkness, there was light. I saw people awakening, souls who had been asleep for so long, suddenly realizing the truth. They weren't alone, they weren't forgotten, they were loved. I saw people coming together, not because of fear, but because of faith. I saw prayers answered, miracles happening in places no one expected. Then, the vision shifted again. I saw myself. I was back on Earth. I was different, changed, but I was there. And in that moment, I understood. This was not just a vision of the world's future, it was my future too. Jesus was showing me something important. I had a choice. I could stay, I could let go, surrender to the peace of this divine presence. No pain, no suffering, just eternal love. Or I could return to a world filled with struggle, to a body that had already suffered death, to a life that would never be the same. Then I felt his voice again, not with sound, but with knowing. You are not done. I wanted to argue, to stay in this perfect love, but deep inside, I already knew the answer. I had been given a gift, a glimpse of something beyond life. And now, it wasn't just for me, it was meant to be shared. The vision faded and I felt myself being pulled away, the light around me dimmed, and suddenly, I was falling. Not in fear, but with purpose. As I plunged downward, back toward my body, back toward the world I had left behind, I heard one final message in my soul. Tell them. And then, everything went black. Darkness. Silence. A void. For a brief moment I was nowhere. It was as if everything, the divine light, the overwhelming love, the vision of the future, had vanished in an instant. Then, suddenly, I gasped. Air flooded into my lungs like I had never breathed before. Pain, sharp and electric, shot through my body. My chest rose and fell violently as I coughed, my heart pounding erratically, like an engine restarting after shutting down. I was back. The room was chaos. People were shouting, hands were on me, I could hear machines beeping wildly. But what struck me the most wasn't the confusion. It was the faces. Doctors, nurses, family, their eyes wide with shock, some frozen in place, others crying. Because what had just happened was not supposed to happen. I had been gone long enough that no one expected me to return. The medical staff had already begun preparing for the inevitable. And yet, here I was, my chest rising and falling, my eyes blinking open, my soul back in my body. It was a miracle. But as my mind adjusted, I realized something deeper. The real miracle wasn't just that I had come back. The real miracle was the choice I had been given. The days that followed were surreal. Doctors ran tests, trying to explain how I was still alive. Some called it a freak accident, an unexplainable anomaly. Others, especially those who had seen the moment I returned, whispered a different word, miracle. Yet the strangest thing wasn't what had happened to my body, it was what had happened to me. The world looked the same, but I felt different. Colors seemed richer, sounds sharper, people more alive than before. But most of all, I felt something I had never known at this depth before. A clarity. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that this life is not all there is, that the love I had experienced in that other realm was real, and it extended here, beyond the veil of death. But with that clarity came responsibility, because now I had to answer the biggest question of all. What would I do with this second chance? At first I wanted to tell everyone, to shout it from the rooftops, but I quickly realized something strange. Not everyone wanted to hear it. Some people embraced my story, their eyes lighting up with hope. Others looked at me with skepticism, searching for a rational explanation. A few even became uncomfortable, as if the very idea of life beyond death was too much for them to consider. I had been given a truth so powerful, so life-changing, but now I had to decide how to share it. Because if there was one thing I had learned, it was this. Miracles are not just about the moment they happen. They are about what you do with them afterward. And so I faced the greatest choice of all, the one that would define the rest of my life. Would I move forward, carrying this truth, sharing it with those who were willing to listen? Or would I stay silent, letting the world go on as if nothing had happened? I knew the answer, and that's when everything truly began. I had been given a second chance, a miracle beyond comprehension. But as I stepped back into the world of the living, I quickly realized something terrifying. The battle wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. At first, I was overwhelmed with gratitude. I wanted to tell the world about what I had seen, about the love, the light, the undeniable truth that there was so much more beyond this life. But then the doubts began to creep in. You imagined it. It was just a hallucination. No one will believe you. At first I dismissed them, but then the dreams began. They weren't like normal dreams. They were vivid, overwhelming, almost too real. In these dreams, I was back in the abyss, alone. No light, no warmth, just an endless, suffocating void. And in that void, a voice spoke. It wasn't like the voice of love I had heard before. This one was different, cold, manipulative. They don't want to hear your story. They'll think you're crazy. You'll lose everything. It was tempting, so tempting to just go back to normal, to pretend none of it had happened, to slip back into the comfort of ignorance. And that's when I realized something horrifying. This wasn't just doubt, it was a test, a final temptation. I knew I had a decision to make. Would I give in to fear and stay silent, or would I stand firm and share the truth, no matter the cost? I turned to prayer. I asked for guidance, and in that moment of desperation, something happened that I can only describe as divine intervention. A new vision flooded into my mind. I saw the world, but not as it was, as it would be. I saw a great division among people, a battle between not of nations or politics, but of souls, a time when truth would be questioned, where deception would spread like wildfire, and where people would have to choose between the light and the darkness. And then I saw him, not as I had before in the peaceful glow of heaven, but returning in glory. I can't explain how I knew, but I did. The sky split open like a curtain being pulled back. A brilliance beyond anything I had ever seen poured through, blinding yet beautiful. And at the center of it all, him, Jesus. But not as the world had imagined him, not the quiet, suffering figure from paintings. No. This was the King. His presence was overwhelming. It was justice and mercy intertwined. A love so powerful that it brought joy to those who knew him and terror to those who had rejected him. I saw people falling to their knees, some in worship, some in despair, some reaching for him in longing, others hiding in fear. Because in that moment, the truth was undeniable. Everything we had done, everything we had chosen, everything we had believed, it all led to this. And the terrifying part? Many weren't ready. I awoke with a new understanding. This wasn't just a second chance for me. It was a second chance for anyone willing to listen. I realized then that the final temptation wasn't just about fear. It was about complacency, the easy road of pretending none of this mattered. But I couldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Because if what I had seen was real, and I knew it was, then nothing else mattered more than preparing for what's to come. And so I made my choice. I would speak, I would share, I would warn, not with fear, but with hope, because I had seen the truth. This life is not the end. A great moment is coming, and we all must choose light or darkness, truth or deception, love or fear. And the question remains, will you be ready? And just like that, I woke up. It wasn't like waking from a normal dream. It was like being ripped from another world and thrown back into this one. My chest heaved, my lungs burned, my heart pounded. I could hear voices, muffled, panicked, machines beeping frantically. For a moment, I didn't even know where I was. Then, reality hit me like a tidal wave. I was alive. I had been there on the other side. I had seen the abyss, felt the pull of the light, heard his voice, and been shown the future. And now, I was back. But why? The doctors couldn't explain it. You were gone, one of them admitted, shaking his head in disbelief. You shouldn't be here. But I was, and I knew why. As I lay in that hospital bed, everything felt different. The walls, the lights, even my own hands. It all felt temporary, like I had been living in a world of shadows, and now I had glimpsed the reality behind them. I had been given something precious. Not just another chance at life, a warning. I had seen what happens after death, and more than that, I had seen what was coming. A time when people would be tested, when truth would be twisted, when fear would rule, and love would be silenced. And yet, there was hope, because I had also seen that no matter how dark things became, the light never stopped shining. It never left. It never faded. It was always there, waiting for those who would seek it. The weight of what I had experienced pressed on me like a fire in my chest. I couldn't keep this to myself. I wasn't supposed to. But then came the real challenge. How do you tell people something like this? Who would believe me? Would they laugh, call me crazy, brush it off as just another near-death hallucination? I wrestled with those fears. But then I remembered what I had seen, the people caught off guard when he returned, the ones who weren't ready, the ones who had ignored the warning signs. And suddenly my fear of what people thought seemed insignificant compared to the reality of what was coming. If you're hearing my voice right now, I don't believe it's an accident. You might have stumbled on this story by chance, or maybe something deep inside you led you here. Either way, this message is for you. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not here to push fear or religion. I'm just here to tell you what I saw. And to urge you, don't ignore the signs. Don't sleepwalk through life assuming you have all the time in the world. Because one day, your moment will come. And when it does, the only thing that will matter is the choice you made before it happened. So ask yourself, are you ready? Are you really ready? Because from what I saw, the time to choose is running out. If you've made it this far, it means something in this story spoke to you. Maybe it's a curiosity, a question deep inside that you've never really confronted before. Maybe it's a feeling, a pull that you can't quite explain. But let me tell you this, you didn't hear this by accident. I believe with everything in me that this message was meant for you right now at this exact moment in your life. Because one day your time will come, and when it does, the things we chase in this life, money, success, status, distractions, none of them will matter. The only thing that will matter is the choice you made before that moment arrived. What choice? The choice to seek the truth. The choice to listen before it's too late. The choice to open your heart to something bigger than yourself. You've now heard my story. You've heard what I saw. You know about the abyss, the light, and the warning. But here's the thing, I can't make the decision for you. I can't force you to believe. I can't make you take this seriously. All I can do is tell you what happened. The rest is up to you. So I ask you, what will you do with this? Will you forget it, go back to life as usual, pretending you never heard any of this? Or will you pause, even just for a moment, and ask yourself, what if it's real? What if everything I thought I knew isn't the full picture? What if this is the wake-up call I've been needing? If you're still unsure, I get it, I was there once too. But let me remind you, I saw what's coming. And the scariest part? Most people won't be ready. Not because they're bad people, not because they didn't get a chance, but because they ignored the signs, because they assumed they had time. But time is running out. This isn't just about me, it's not just about my story, it's about you. So here's what I ask, no pressure, no expectations, just an invitation. If any part of this stirred something inside you, don't ignore it. Take a moment, just a moment, to sit with it. Ask the hard questions, seek the truth. And if you don't know where to start, that's okay. Just start by saying this. God, if you're real, show me. If there's more to this life than what I see, open my eyes. I believe with all my heart that if you ask with sincerity, you will get an answer. Maybe not today, maybe not in the way you expect, but one day you'll know. And when that day comes, you'll be glad you listened. If this message spoke to you, share it. Maybe there's someone in your life who needs to hear this, someone who's searching, lost, or just going through the motions. Don't keep it to yourself. And if you want to hear more, if you want to go deeper, subscribe and turn on notifications. This is just the beginning. We have so much more to talk about. Thank you for listening. And remember, the choice is yours. But whatever you do, don't wait until it's too late.